The Millionaire's Journey with his autistic boy. Lessons in love and understanding. In the heart of San Francisco, a city of dreams and noise, David Hartman sat in his sleek office, staring at a computer screen that reflected both wealth and emptiness. He was a self-made millionaire, a titan in tech, but the glow of success could not fill the hollowness in his chest. Dinner parties with influential businessmen and lavish charity events had become his norm. Yet his greatest achievement, the 10-year-old boy waiting at home, felt like a distant planet. Ethan, his son, lived in a world out of sync with the bustling reality around them. Often lost in his thoughts, Ethan spoke in a language only he understood, filled with a rhythm and pattern that seemed to dance away from David. The words fell like wisps of smoke, tantalizing yet unreachable. Each attempt to connect seemed to raise walls instead of bridges. Laughter fading into silence, smiles yanked away by misunderstanding. One evening, the phone rang, slicing through the silence. David's heart raced. "Is this Mr. Hartman?" The voice from Ethan's school was clipped, clinical. They explained how Ethan had been withdrawn, isolating himself more than usual during recess. He had skipped a meal and chosen to sit alone during group activities. Panic gripped David, squeezing tight. What was happening to his boy? How had he missed the signs? As the night wore on, anxiety twisted at his stomach. He needed answers, yet all he felt was uncertainty. What did his son need? How could he, a man so skilled at understanding numbers and trends, be so blind to the needs of Ethan? The city outside pulsed with life, but inside, all he heard was his own heartbeat thumping in fear. The next day loomed ominously, a meeting with Ethan's teachers on the horizon. David paced the floor, mind racing, questions seeping in like shadows. Had he spent too much time chasing success? Did Ethan even know who he was as a father? Gripping the edge of the table, he thought back to their last family vacation. Ethan running along the shore, squealing with delight as waves splashed against his legs. Pure joy radiating from him. Driven by a sudden urge, David climbed up to the attic that evening. A place of cobwebbed memories. Dust. Motes danced in the sunlight. There, he discovered an old photo album, its pages yellowed and crinkled with time. Photographs of laughter, lost moments, and small victories stared back at him. They painted a picture of a once joyful life, a father and son connection he had overlooked in his quest for success. As his fingers traced the pictures, one image caught his breath, a candid shot of Ethan. Eyes sparkling as he held a small trophy for winning a sandcastle building contest. What had made that moment so special? David stared at that photograph, heart pounding. Could this treasure trove of memories hold the key to understanding his son? Would they lead him to bridge the emotional chasm between them? The weight of responsibility hung heavily on David's shoulders. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he remain lost in the noise? Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming up. And while you're there, give me a big like to help me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. As David gazed at the photograph, the weight of realization pressed on his chest. He wanted to connect with Ethan, to solve the riddle of his son's heart. But in that moment, the attic door creaked open, startling him. "Dad?" Ethan's voice broke the silence. The boy stood there, eyes wide and searching. David's heart surged with hope. Maybe this was a chance to bridge the distance between them. "Hey, buddy, look what I found," David called, waving the photo at him. Ethan shuffled forward. his gaze flicking to the picture. Then, out of nowhere, his expression shifted, turning dark and tense, like a storm rolling in. "Put it down. I don't want to see that." Confusion coursed through David. Was it just the memories, or something more? "Why not, Ethan? This was a great day. You were so happy." "I said no!" The boy's voice rose sharp like glass breaking. The tension hung in the air, thick and cold, wrapping around them. David stood there, bewildered, battling the urge to press further. But then, a flicker of desperation ignited within him. "Ethan, please, talk to me. I want to understand." Suddenly, Ethan's hands flew to his temples, fingers digging in as if trying to squeeze out a terrible thought. "You don't want to know. It's not what you think. Not at all." The shift in his tone, the panic in his eyes. Something shifted in David's gut. The atmosphere thickened, almost electric, a warning sign flashing bright. "What do you mean?" Before Ethan could respond, a loud knock echoed through the attic, jerking them both. David's heart skipped. Who could that be? He dashed towards the door, glancing back at Ethan, whose face was frozen in fear. He opened the door to find a police officer waiting, uniform crisp and serious. "Mr. Hartman?" The officer's tone was grave, eyes searching David's. "We need to talk about your son." The air rushed out of David's lungs. "What about him?" "May we come inside?" the officer asked, his stance unwavering. David stepped aside, dread pooling in his stomach. "Is something wrong?" The officer took a moment, then spoke, each word dropping like a stone. "We've had reports of an incident at his school. It involves Ethan." Instantly, a chill raced down David's spine. What kind of incident? Ethan was still standing behind him, confusion turning to fear, eyes darting back and forth between his dad and the officer. "The other students." The officer hesitated, gauging the gravity. "They've seen something that needs your attention. It's serious." "Serious?" David echoed, a lump forming in his throat. "What do you mean?" "Ethan's been accused of something quite alarming." The room spun, words buzzing in his ears. "Accused? Ethan?" David turned to his son, searching for answers in his eyes, but all he found was panic. Those wide, frightened eyes suddenly felt so distant, so far away from the boy who used to build sandcastles with him. "What are they saying, Ethan? What did you do?" The fear clawed at David's throat. "I didn't mean it. I'm... Ethan started, his words trailing off into a choke of emotions. The officer's presence was heavy, a misjudged weight that pressed down on them. "We need to investigate further," he said, looking between them. "Please, come with me." And suddenly, David's world teetered on the edge of collapse. How had they gotten here? What unraveling truth lay just beyond their grasp? His heart raced. This was a question he never expected to face. The real fear gripped him, a fear that had nothing to do with success or wealth. A fear that threatened to destroy the fragile bond between a father and his son. What had he overlooked? What devastating truth waited in the shadows? David stood frozen, heart pounding like a drum, as the officer's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The chill in the room grew sharper, slicing through him like ice. Ethan's eyes were wide, filled with fear and confusion. What could they possibly be accusing his son of? "Can you tell me what they mean?" David whispered, his voice trembling. "What happened at school?" Ethan began to shake his head, backing away, eyes darting towards the officer, and then back to his father. "I didn't do anything, Dad, I swear." His voice cracked, filled with terror. "Let's just take a moment," the officer suggested, his voice steady yet imposing. "I assure you, we're here to help, but we need to know the truth." "What truth?" David demanded, anger mixing with panic. "What are they blaming Ethan for?" Just then, Ethan clutched his stomach, his face paling. It was as if the weight of the accusation was physically crushing him. I can't talk about it." "But you have to," David nearly yelled, but there was a desperation lacing his voice. "Ethan, please!" Then everything changed in an instant. A loud noise erupted outside, a cacophony of sirens and shouts. Panic painted Ethan's face even deeper as he took another step back. "No, no, I don't want to go out there," he wailed, hands flying to his ears, eyes squeezing shut. Before David could react, the officer's phone buzzed, and he answered it swiftly, his expression darkening as the voice on the other end delivered urgent news. Each moment dragged painfully, stretching out the tension. David watched as Ethan trembled. Breath quickening, trapped in cycles of confusion and fear. "Sir," the officer said, his voice now strained, "there's been a situation at the school. We need everyone evacuated. It might involve Ethan." Before David could fully grasp the implications, the officer turned his gaze back to them, eyes narrowing. "We should go." But then a loud explosion rattled the air outside, vibrating through the very walls of the attic. David's heart plunged. He hadn't prepared for this. He reached for Ethan, just as the boy gasped, eyes wide with pure terror. "Dad!" Ethan bolted past him, racing down the stairs, the sound of his frantic footsteps pounding away. David felt a surge of panic. An instinct kicked in. He dashed after him, desperate to reach his son. The moment they burst onto the street, chaos greeted them. Crowds were scattering, people screaming as a plume of smoke billowed into the sky from the school building. Sirens wailed, and police officers shouted orders, rushing about like ants in a disturbed colony. "Ethan!" David shouted, scanning the chaos for his son's familiar figure. The boy was nowhere in sight. David's heart raced, confusion slashing at his mind. Panic transformed into a cold grip of fear. "Ethan!" he called again, but the screams drowned out his voice, and the smoke wrapped around him like a shroud. Finally, he spotted Ethan, standing on the curb, his tiny frame dwarfed by the chaos. But something was different. The look in his eyes. It wasn't just fear. It was something far more complex. Something David couldn't place. As David reached him, Ethan turned, eyes not filled with terror, but with an intensity that sent chills down David's spine. "I didn't mean for this to happen, Dad," he said, voice low and strained. "It wasn't supposed to end like this." "What are you talking about?" David's voice trembled, confusion flooding him again. "What did you do?" Before Ethan could answer, another sound cut through the turmoil. A loud blast from the school. Louder and closer than before. The ground shook beneath their feet. In that split second, confusion turned to horror, and David understood. Everything he thought he knew shattered. The truth loomed like a dark cloud overhead, threatening to rain devastation on their lives. The weight of secrets and terrifying possibilities crashed over them. What had David overlooked? What devastating truth lay in the shadows of his son's heart? As the smoke swirled around them, choking the air, David felt the fragile bond they fought to build trembling on the edge of a precipice. And he knew nothing would ever be the same. David's heart raced as the loud blast echoed in the air. Panic pulsed through his veins. Ethan stood frozen, trembling. "What was happening?" "Ethan!" David called, trying to keep his tone steady. But his voice wavered, reflecting the chaos. "We need to get somewhere safe." Ethan's eyes darted around, chaotic and wild. "Dad, I didn't mean for this to happen. I never wanted." "Stop. Just breathe," David urged, desperate to keep his son grounded amidst the uproar. But then another explosion shook the ground, and David's vision blurred with fear. He pulled Ethan closer. They stumbled back, retreating further from the chaos as shouting filled the streets. It felt like the world was unraveling, an intricate tapestry tearing apart thread by thread. David scanned the scene, eyes wide, searching for a sign of danger. What had he done? How had it come to this? He had been so consumed with his life that he hadn't seen the signs, hadn't realized how fragile their world had become. The fire alarms wailed, piercing through the screaming crowd. David's mind raced as he tried to piece together everything. The accusations, the fear flickering in Ethan's eyes. What truth had remained hidden in the shadows? Dad, Ethan started again, but... The words caught in his throat. He looked terrified, sweat beading on his forehead. Then something shifted in his expression, something eclipsed by a sudden flicker of recognition. Before David could ask what was wrong, a loud voice broke through the pandemonium. "Ethan, come here!" David turned to see a woman pushing through the crowd, her face pale but determined. It was Miss Carter, Ethan's teacher. She rushed towards them, fear in her eyes. "You've got to get Ethan away from here. It's not safe." "Why? What's happening?" David shouted, urgency clawing at him. "There's been a situation, an emergency," she said, out of breath. "Ethan, there's something you need to know." Ethan stepped back, shrinking into David's side. "I didn't do anything. I promise." He clutched his father's arm, eyes pleading. "Ethan, listen." Miss Carter's voice softened, filled with urgency. "There are police investigating a possible threat. It might involve someone seeking revenge. On you." David's heart dropped. Revenge? Why? The crowd around them began to surge, grabbing at the edge of the chaos, whispering rumors and questions. David's eyes flicked between Ms. Carter and Ethan. "But why would anyone want to hurt Ethan?" David demanded, voice raising with frustration. "Because Ms. Carter hesitated, looking at Ethan with pity. "Because he's different, and some kids, they can't understand that." A sudden flurry of movement caught David's attention. In the chaos, a flash of color danced in the smoke. Someone was running towards them, dressed in dark clothing. David's breath caught, instincts flaring. "No!" he yelled, stepping forward as the figure approached. "Get away from him!" The shadowy figure halted, hands raised, then revealed a mask, eerily hiding their identity. "Stop! I'm not here to hurt him!" "Then what are you doing?" With a swift motion, the person pulled the mask down, revealing a young girl, barely a teenager, with tear-streaked cheeks and frantic eyes. "Ethan," she cried, her voice cracking. "I need to tell you something. You need to remember, it wasn't a mistake. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone." The world stilled. David felt the rush of blood retreat from his ears, leaving silence in its wake. "What do you mean?" David stepped back, confusion flooding him. "Please," the girl begged, her hands trembling. "You need to understand. I didn't want this. It was just supposed to be just a prank." Ethan looked between David and the girl, confusion and recognition playing across his face. "What prank? What did you do?" David barked, the weight of terror heavy on his chest. "I just wanted him to see. I just wanted to be friends. But it went wrong. So wrong." David's heart sank further. What had Ethan been caught in? What dreadful truth would unravel next? The shadows deepening around them felt even darker. The girl's frantic confession echoed in his mind, each word tightening the grip of fear. Ethan's innocent face turned blurry, lost in the storm raging inside David. What have you done? He felt a surge of rage mingle with devastation. And then, behind them, the chaos erupted again. The sound of shattered glass and screams filled the air as the crowd surged forward, terror painting every face. What awaited them, hidden beneath the layers of confusion and fear? Would David uncover the truth in time to protect his son? Or would the past swallow them whole? Ethan's voice cut through the chaos, each word crackling with urgency. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Panic twisted his small frame, eyes darting between David and the girl. "Stay back!" David shouted at the girl, trying to shield Ethan with his body. The world around them felt like it was collapsing. Sirens blared, and the smoke thickened, a dark omen hanging over them. But the girl didn't back down. "Please, you have to listen! Ethan, you need to! Remember what happened that day." "What day?" David demanded, desperation clawing at him. "What are you talking about?" Before the girl could answer, another blast echoed in the distance, closer, shaking the ground beneath their feet. David grabbed Ethan's arm tighter. "We need to go. Now." Yet Ethan was frozen, eyes wide, lost in a spiral of fear and confusion. "Dad, I don't know." "Ethan Smith," a voice boomed from behind them. David turned to see another officer running toward them, shouting, urgency dripping from every syllable. "We need to get everyone away from the area, now!" David felt a surge of anger. "What's going on? Why is all of this happening?" The officer stopped in his tracks, locking eyes with David. "Sir, there's been an active shooter. Situation at the school. You need to come with me." A surge of disbelief crashed over David like icy water. "A shooter? Here? In our school?" "Ethan," Miss Carter shouted from nearby. Fear etched across her face. "You need to go with the officer. We'll make sure you're safe." "But," Ethan started, trembling. "Go!" David urged, voice firm but desperate. "I'll be right behind you." The officer grasped Ethan's shoulder. "This way!" Suddenly, David's phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He fumbled and pulled it out, heart racing. A text flashed on the screen. "You need to find out the truth about Ethan. It's not what you think." His heart dropped. Who could be sending a message like this right now? David barely registered the chaos as people screamed and scattered. In that moment, everything felt surreal. "Let's go," the officer said, pulling Ethan away. "Move!" But as they turned, the girl lunged forward, panic fueling her desperation. "Wait, Ethan! The truth!" In an instant, with a flash too quick to process, another explosion rocked the ground. David's heart stopped as the world seemed to explode in chaos around him. The earth shook underfoot as dust and debris flew, obscuring his vision. Ethan screamed, "Dad." David's stomach dropped as he stumbled toward the sound of his son's voice, fighting through the thick, choking smoke that blurred everything around him. "Ethan!" And then, just like that, silence fell. It wasn't the silence of calm, but the eerie stillness of the aftermath, broken only by the distant wails of sirens and the sounds of people shouting. David squinted through the dust, heart racing. The crowd had pushed back, but where was Ethan? He felt a gnawing terror surge in his chest, like a balloon ready to burst. "Ethan!" Then he caught a glimpse of something. Eyes, familiar and wide, peering through the haze. But there was something different, something chilling in those eyes. Suddenly, the girl was back, scrambling through the debris, desperation boiling in her veins. "You don't understand. Ethan's in danger. I didn't want him to get hurt." "What do you mean?" David shouted, the raw edge of fear cracking his voice. Just then, the officer reappeared, looking panicked. "We need to get everyone to safety. Did you see where the last blast came from?" David couldn't tear his gaze from the girl. "What did you do?" "I didn't mean to. I didn't know it would get this far." Her voice was trembling, fear spilling out with each word. "But Ethan, it's him. He knows." "Knows what?" David pressed, confusion colliding with dread. The shadows around him felt heavier, wrapping tighter, weighty with secrets. And then, with a sudden crash, a piece of the building fell away, revealing a hidden area behind the wall. David's heart raced again. A hidden space? What truth was concealed within that chaos? Ethan stepped forward, eyes filled with a fierce determination that sent chills down David's spine. "I knew something was wrong. I never told you, but I was scared." "What do you mean?" David's chest tightened with panic, even pause, swallowing hard. "The day of the sandcastle contest, I saw something. I thought it was a game, but I didn't want to believe it was real." A cold wave of realization washed over David. Everything he thought he understood was unraveling right before him. What had Ethan witnessed? What truth lay just beneath the surface, hidden in the shadows of their lives? As the chaos resumed around them, the mystery swirled in the air, heavier than the smoke. What lay ahead? Dark and turbulent, threatening to pull them deeper into the web of secrets that tangled their lives together. Would they emerge unscathed, or be swallowed whole? Ethan stared at David, eyes wide. "I saw something. I thought it was just a kid messing around. I didn't think. His voice trailed off, fear creeping into every word. The distant wails of sirens made his breaths come in short gasps. Ethan, please, David urged, gripping his son's shoulders. You need to tell me what you saw. Now. A moment of silence hung heavily between them, thick like the smoke that wrapped around the street. The chaos roared on, but in that moment, it felt like time stopped, waiting for Ethan to find his voice. I saw a kid with a backpack, he finally whispered, eyes darting. He kept looking around. I thought he was just shy, hiding from everyone. I didn't mean to tell anyone. An explosion rumbled in the distance, shaking the ground. Ethan stumbled backward, colliding into David's chest. David's heart raced. With panic and protectiveness, just stay close to me, he shouted over the chaos. We need to get out of here. He could feel the panic rising in himself, a desperate need to shield his son. But before they could move, the girl's voice sliced through the noise. No, you have to listen. Ethan, the kid in the backpack, it wasn't about being shy. Another explosion interrupted her, and the ground trembled again. David instinctively pulled Ethan closer, eyes narrowing on the girl. What the hell is going on? Suddenly, a loud crack pierced the air, followed by a sudden wave of screaming from the crowd. David turned just in time to see something heavy and dark plummeting from a nearby building. Time slowed, each heartbeat echoing against the frantic cries around them. No! He screamed, recognizing the shadow just before it landed with a deafening crash, dust exploding outward into a choking cloud. Dad! Ethan screamed, ripping free from David's grip, eyes locked on the chaos where the shadow lay motionless, silent. David's heart sank. The crowd surged away from the debris, but David moved forward instinctively, pushing against the wave of terrified bodies. He noted to see if it was really what he feared. Breathless, he reached the site just as the dust began to settle. What he saw froze him in place. It was a boy, no older than 12, collapsed amid the rubble. The backpack lay torn beside him, items spilling out, scattered like broken dreams. There was a twisted sense of familiarity as David squinted at the boy's face. His eyes blinked open, wide with shock. Ethan? He breathed, barely able to form the word. But it wasn't his son. And then, in a moment that shattered his world, the boy turned his head and caught Ethan's gaze. Recognition flashed between them, something deeper than friendship or fear. No, David whispered, the ground shifting beneath him as the unsettling truth unfurled. The boy was Joey. Ethan's classmate, the one who had bullied him for months? Dad, I didn't. Ethan's voice trembled, panic flooding his eyes. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. David's heart raced. The pressure built, every secret, every unspoken fear crashing together in a storm. What do you mean? What did you do? But just then, a loud voice shot through the smoke. Ethan, get away from him! It was Miss Carter, her face pale with dread. Her eyes flicked between David and the boy. You don't understand. Understand what? David yelled, fear morphing into frustration. What? She dashed forward, grabbing Ethan by the shoulder. We need to leave. Now. But you don't get it. He was my friend. Your friend? Miss Carter's voice cracked, urgency filling her words. He tried to hurt you. That bag, he was planning something. Ethan's eyes brimmed with tears. No, he was just scared. I wanted to help. David felt the world tilt again. What had started as a chaotic night had spiraled into a nightmare he never saw coming. Get away from him, Miss Carter shouted. Again, her grip on Ethan tightening as fear washed over David. Ethan shook his head, unable to comprehend. I thought he just needed a friend. And then it hit him. The darkness of his son's innocence mingled with the trauma of the situation. David's heart twisted. Who was Ethan becoming in the face of fear? What dark corners had he stumbled into? But just then, the ground shook again, and the boy on the ground gasped, pushing himself up with labored breath. His eyes locked onto Ethan's, filled with desperation. You can help me. You're the only one. Don't let them take me. And with that small plea, everything shattered. David felt a suffocating weight settle in his chest. How deep did this go? What unseen ties bound them? All? As panic surged again, David knew one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same. Ethan stared at David, eyes wide. I saw something. I thought it was just a kid messing around. I didn't think. His voice trailed off, fear creeping into every word. The distant wails of sirens made his breaths come in short gasps. Ethan, please, David urged, gripping his son's shoulders. You need to tell me what you saw. Now. A moment of silence hung heavily between them. Thick like the smoke that wrapped around the street. The chaos roared on, but in that moment, it felt like time stopped, waiting for Ethan to find his voice. I saw a kid with a backpack, he finally whispered, eyes darting. He kept looking around. I thought he was just shy, hiding from everyone. I didn't mean to tell anyone. Another explosion rumbled in the distance, shaking the ground beneath their feet. David grabbed Ethan's arm tighter. Just stay close to me. He could feel the panic rising in himself, a desperate need to shield his son. But before they could move, the girl's voice sliced through the noise. No, you have to listen. Ethan, the kid in the backpack, it wasn't about being shy. Another explosion interrupted her, and the ground trembled again. David instinctively pulled Ethan closer, eyes narrowing on the girl. What the hell is going on? Suddenly, a loud crack pierced the air, followed by a sudden wave of screaming from the crowd. David turned just in time to see something heavy and dark plummeting from a nearby building. Time slowed, each heartbeat echoing against the frantic cries around them. No! He screamed, recognizing the shadow just before it landed with a deafening crash, dust exploding outward into a choking cloud. Dad! Ethan screamed, ripping free from David's grip, eyes locked on the chaos where the shadow lay motionless, silent. David's heart sank. The crowd surged away from the debris. But David moved forward instinctively, pushing against the wave of terrified bodies. He needed to see if it was really what he feared. Breathless, he reached the site just as the dust began to settle. What he saw froze him in place. It was a boy, no older than 12, collapsed amid the rubble. The backpack lay, torn beside him, items spilling out, scattered like broken dreams. There was a twisted sense of familiarity as David squinted at the boy's face. His eyes blinked open, wide with shock. Ethan? He breathed, barely able to form the word. But it wasn't his son. And then, in a moment that shattered his world, the boy turned his head and caught Ethan's gaze. Recognition flashed between them, something deeper than friendship or fear. No, David whispered. The ground shifting beneath him as the unsettling truth unfurled. The boy was Joey, Ethan's classmate, the one who had bullied him for months. Dad, I didn't. Ethan's voice trembled, panic flooding his eyes. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. David's heart raced. The pressure built. Every secret, every unspoken fear crashing together in a storm. What do you mean? What did you do? But just then, a loud voice shot through the smoke. Ethan, get away from him! It was Miss Carter, her face pale with dread. Her eyes flicked between David and the boy. You don't understand. Understand what? David yelled, fear morphing into frustration. What? She dashed forward, grabbing Ethan by the shoulder. We need to leave, now. But you don't get it. He was my friend. Your friend? Miss Carter. Carter's voice cracked, urgency filling her words. He tried to hurt you. That bag, he was planning something. Just as David was about to protest, from the edge of the chaos, a figure darted forward. Wild eyes, frantic movements. It was Joey's older brother. You, he cried, locking eyes with Ethan. You did this. What? No, Ethan shouted, backing against David. But the accusation hung heavy in the air. You had to be the one. You made him feel like a loser. Joey's brother pointed a finger at Ethan. You think you can play with people's lives? And with that, The world seemed to tilt. David felt the cold steel of betrayal cut through everything. Memories of bullying, their boy's secrets unfurling like dark tendrils of smoke. What? What do you mean? David stammered, turning to Ethan, panic creeping into his own heart. Was it really your fault? Ethan shook his head violently, face pale and trembling. No, Dad, I didn't know. I just wanted to help. Tears traced pathways down his cheeks. But before they could grasp the full weight of the moment, the ground rumbled again, but this time with a deeper, more resonant tremor. A crack formed up the side of the nearby building, a deep groan echoing through the cordoned area. And then, like a malevolent hand, the building began to tilt, the facade crumbling above them. Run! David yelled, grabbing Ethan and propelling him forward. They darted away just as the structure began to collapse. Concrete and metal cascading into the street like a monstrous wave. In that instant, everything shifted. The world spun in chaos, and in the midst of the destruction, a figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked under the debris, eyes glinting like knives. A haunting smile etched across the stranger's face. Did you think this was just about Ethan? The stranger taunted. This was never about him. A wave of terror washed over David. Who are you? The figure lifted a hand, revealing something hidden. And what you don't know will tear you apart. Terror gripped David's throat. A sickening realization dawning. The pieces twisted into a puzzle he couldn't solve. Who were they really facing? What dark truth lay buried beneath their lives? Before he could react, darkness enveloped them. The scream of destruction echoing in his ears as everything blurred into chaos. Would they find out the truth? Or would they become just another memory in the wreckage of despair? The dust settled around them like a heavy blanket, stifling in its weight. David could barely hear the chaotic uproar behind him, sirens wailing, people shouting, fear clawing at the edges of their world. He was focused, heart pounding, willing his body to move toward the boy on the ground. Joey! Ethan! David shouted, pulling his son close. The weight of the world felt crushing as he turned to the girl. What do you mean he was planning something? But the girl looked as lost as they were, eyes wide, breathless. I didn't know. I didn't mean. I thought it was just a prank. A joke. A sound rang out. Another explosion. The ground quivered beneath their feet, and David tightened his grip around Ethan. We need to go. Blood rushed in his ears. He had to keep his son safe. They started to move, trying to shield Ethan from the chaos. But Joey's brother lunged into the fray. You think this is a joke? My brother is lying there because of you. Because of your stupid games. David felt anger flare. Stop! This isn't the time! But the space around them seemed to break apart, both figuratively and literally. As the crowd surged, pushing them back, a scream cut through the noise, piercing the air. Look out! David turned, eyes wide, just as a concrete chunk fell from above. Ethan, get down! He yelled, propelling them both to the ground. The impact knocked the air from his chest, and pain shot through him as the debris landed mere feet away. Heart racing, he struggled to breathe. His mind spun. What was happening? Then he spotted the girl again. We have to leave. Now, she cried. Where? David shouted back. Where is safe? But her eyes, wide with panic, suddenly shifted, narrowing as if she saw something behind him. David turned, just in time to see Joey rising, blood trickling down his face. He looked dazed, yet furious, eyes scanning the scene like a hunter seeking prey. No, Joey gasped, choking on his words. No more lies. Before David could react, Joey pulled off his backpack, revealing a stash of items that seemed to burst from the seams. Crumbled papers, torn photographs, and a small device that blinked ominously. This was all your fault, Joey cried, voice rising above the chaos. Ethan shivered, stepping back. What is that? Shut up, Joey shouted, his voice cracking. This wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't meant for you. Suddenly, the device beeped loudly, a series of rapid clicks resonating through the air. Panic seized David. What did you do? He cried. I wanted them to notice me. Joey screamed, the desperation leaking through his anger. But it didn't stop. It won't stop. And in that split second, reality twisted. The device exploded, bright light swallowing them whole. David instinctively shielded Ethan with his body, eyes clenched shut against the blinding brilliance. Every fiber of his being screamed in fear. When the light faded, David blinked, vision clearing. They were no longer in the chaos of the street. Instead, they stood in a small, dimly lit room. What just happened? David gasped. Ethan looked around, confusion clouding his features. Dad? What's going on? But before David could respond, the girl stepped forward. You don't understand. None of us do. Her face paled, eyes haunted. This isn't just about you, Ethan. We're all connected in this. What do you mean? David demanded, adrenaline surging again. Joey stood up slowly, wincing. I didn't just bring you here to hurt anyone. I tried to warn you. You're all part of something bigger. I thought I was protecting you. A cold dread settled in David's chest. Protecting us from what? Joey's voice dropped, heavy with weight. Your family, it's not what you think. You're not just a millionaire tech giant, David. You come from darkness. Darkness that could destroy everything. I saw how it all started. Stunned silence enveloped the room. David's heart raced, mouth dry. What could this kid possibly know? Everything you perceive, every success, it's built on deception, Joey shouted, eyes burning with intensity. Ethan is the key, and you have to protect him. But there's something he hasn't told you. What? David's voice trembled, fear pooling in his stomach. What is it? The weight of uncertainty hung thick in the air, a question that begged to be answered. But just as Joey opened his mouth, the lights flickered. And the walls of the hidden room began to tremble. No! The girl screamed. Not again! We have to hurry! But David wasn't ready. The layers of truth piled upon him, and the heavy burden of reality closed in, suffocating. As the room shook violently, he frantically grabbed Ethan's hand, desperate to understand, desperate to shield his son from whatever lay ahead. What have you done, Joey? David whispered, feeling gravity shift beneath him, racing into an unknown future. What dark revelations were waiting for them all? What truth would tear their world apart? As the ground trembled beneath them, David's senses surged with adrenaline. He gripped Ethan tightly, fear clawing at his insides. What dark truth could Joey possibly know that would change everything? Joey's voice hummed in the air, weighty, heavy with secrets. Your family, it's not what you think. Before David could react, the walls of the hidden room shook violently, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. The air felt charged with an electric tension, heightening every instinct within him. He squeezed Ethan's hand, ready to protect him from whatever lay ahead. But then, in a flash, the floor beneath them cracked wide open, yawning like a mouth ready to swallow them whole. David felt a pull, like gravity itself had shifted. He barely had time to react before the ground gave way, yanking Ethan from his grasp. No! David screamed, lunging after his son, grappling to reach him as he disappeared down into the dark chasm. Dad! Ethan's voice echoed. A slice of raw panic that shot through David. And then, just as quickly, Joey stumbled closer, grabbing David's arm with a fierce grip. Don't! You won't survive! What do you mean? David's heart raced, confusion melting into fury. But before Joey could explain, the collapse intensified. The walls were rumbling, forming shadows that clawed at them. In a frantic moment, a blinding light burst from the open floor, illuminating the space like 1,000 suns. Look! The girl shouted, panic threading her voice. David shielded his eyes, squinting into the brilliance. But then, within that light, a figure began to rise. At first, it was a silhouette, hazy and indistinct. But then, it solidified. A woman, her face taut with anguish, eyes wide, filled with both familiarity and horror. Evelyn? David gasped. It couldn't be. His heart dropped into his stomach. That was his mother. But she had vanished, lost to a world of shadows years ago. Mom? The word frag with disbelief, churning like a tempest inside him. He felt Ethan's absence like a wound in his heart, but the sight of her forced a swell of emotion that left him breathless. David, you need to understand. Evelyn's voice cut through the chaos, clear and strong. This has always been bigger than you realize. I'm sorry. I was wrong to leave. Wrong to let them pull me away. Who? What are you talking about? Desperation clawed at him. Where's Ethan? He needs me. I was protecting you both, she said, stepping closer. But the blinding light around her flickered, threatening to collapse into darkness. There are forces at play, things you don't know. Ethan, he's special. He could unlock everything. But so much was lost. So much I couldn't tell you. Mom! David cried out, desperation spilling into his voice. How? Could you leave us like this? You need to help us get Ethan back. But her face twisted with pain. It might already be too late. A dark shadow lunged forward from the chasm, seizing Evelyn's arm with a vice-like grip that defied reality. David's heart raced as he strained to see what lurked beneath the surface of light and shadow. Run! Joey screamed, but it fell hollow and distant, and then everything exploded. A scream pierced the air as the figure pulled Evelyn down into the depths, her hollow eyes wide with a terror that snagged at David's heart. No! David felt the ground shudder, chaos collapsing into silence. The world tilted, shadows twisting around him, and the last glimpse of his mother vanished into the darkness. Mom! David shouted, voice echoing as the space fell into an unsettling silence, leaving him breathless in the relentless unknown. Despair and panic gnawed at him, a fraying thread he desperately clung to. The world felt hollow, like a heavy curtain drawn over a nightmare he couldn't escape. As David stood on that precipice, he felt a flicker of hope and tragedy blend into a storm of emotion. It was a moment where everything shifted, the boundaries of their lives unraveling into something unimaginable, something that could tear them all asunder. Where is Ethan? David whispered, fear tightening around his throat. And in that haunting silence, uncertainty loomed. Would they ever find him? What had just been unearthed in the chaos of shadows? The unknown stretched before them, and David knew, deep down, nothing would ever be the same. The air crackled with tension as David stood at the edge of the abyss, heart racing. He could barely wrap his mind around what had just happened. The last glimpse of Evelyn was burned into his memory, a haunting reminder that the shadows of their past were still lurking. He turned to Joey, urgency surging through him. What do you mean we're connected? Joey stepped back, fear flashing in his eyes. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to be seen. I thought if I did something big, it would make everyone notice. David felt the weight of that statement. And this is how you thought to do it? By endangering lives? I didn't know what else to do. I thought... Joey looked beyond David, his voice trembling. I thought something would finally change. Change? David's voice broke, anger morphing into grief. You put my son in danger. You don't even realize what you've done. Behind them, the walls quaked again, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. Dust settled like thick fog. A part of him wanted to scream, but the other half, one driven by sheer desperation, needed to save Ethan. Where is Ethan? David shouted again, desperation coloring every word. We have to get out of here, the girl cried. This place is collapsing. With a newfound clarity, David turned to the remnants of his family, the memories clenching his heart tighter with every passing. Second, we've got to find Ethan. He's the key. The girl nodded, eyes brightening with fear-fueled determination. He might still be in the school. Joey, guilt etched into every crevice of his youth, stepped forward. I can help you. I know a way. With new resolve, the unlikely trio rushed toward the crumbling exit. David pushed his fear aside, his focus clear. Lead the way. Together, they weaved through the darkness, heartbeats synchronized in a frantic rhythm. What lay ahead was uncertain, but the burning need to find Ethan propelled them forward. Suddenly, they burst through a doorway into a corridor alive with chaos. Smoke twisted and curled, blinding them momentarily. Clearer now, David spotted students huddled in corners, teachers ushering them to safety. "Ethan!" he bellowed, panic igniting again. "Where are you?" "Dad!" A familiar voice sliced through the noise, and there, straddling the line between fear and relief, was Ethan, clutching a teacher's hand. "Ethan!" David sprinted toward him, arms wide open. The moment their eyes locked, a surge of warmth spread through David's chest. A shadow lifted from Ethan's shoulders. "Dad, I was so scared!" Tears brimmed in David's eyes. "I thought I lost you." The embrace pulled them from the chaos as murmurs of relief drifted around them like echoes, voices once strained, now resonating with hope. But Joey's voice broke through, heavy with remorse. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I should have known better." Ethan pulled away slightly, searching Joey's eyes. "You didn't mean it, right? You didn't want anyone to get hurt?" The girl stepped up, her chin lifted. "We have to make things right, together." And in that moment, they all seemed to realize what happened. They needed each other. It wasn't the tragedy that defined them, but how they chose to face it. As police officers flooded the area, David felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had more than just his wealth and success. He had his son, connections, and allies who would stay by their side. "Let's go home," David said softly, squeezing Ethan's shoulder. Together, father and son walked forward, stepping into the light of a new beginning. But as they made their way through the crowd, David's heart echoed with questions. What lay ahead for them all? Would their past haunt them, or could they find peace? Before he could dwell on it further, Joey whispered, "I've got your back, Ethan, always." The bond they forged felt unshakable, but shadows lingered, whispering of buried truths. There was still so much to uncover. Now's the time for you, dear friends. If you felt the pulse of this story, don't wait another second. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What did you think? And please, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know this ending. Only true fans understand how important it is to support our journey together.